Hello and welcome to Advanced Retrodaptics. This is Tyler Disney. In this episode, I had a wonderful conversation with Chris Knighton. So Chris is 34 years old. He and his family are halfway to financially independent, but they're at the point where they're starting to wonder, does that even mean anything? So recently, Chris turned his side hustle of a running coach business into a full hustle, quit his job because they wanted him to come back to the office. We talk about how he dropped out of an electrical engineering career, how he hiked the Appalachian Trail, how he hiked the Pacific Crest Trail in 99 days. We talk about activism, and we talk about the relationship between meaningful work and frugality, and having a family, and what it means like to look normal, but not necessarily to be normal. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Chris Knighton. You're 34 now. It's 2023. And I know that you quit your electrical engineering degree in 2011
Yep.
because you were disillusioned.
Yep.
I'm doing math here. You were like 22?
Yeah, I didn't make it very long. So I graduated college in 2011 with a degree in electrical engineering and minor in mechanical engineering. I went to college in Boston at Northeastern University. And I got my first job right out of college working for I guess you would call it a general engineering contractor. They did a lot of municipal and government type projects, and I was one of their electrical engineers who would do the electrical specifications for larger infrastructure. My company would build things like wastewater treatment facilities. They would do roadwork type projects. They would build office buildings and other public works type projects as well. But I became disillusioned in it pretty quickly. This was something that definitely started while I was still in college. I pretty quickly learned, probably around the age of 19 or so, when I was still in college, that this wasn't going to be a path that I wanted to stay on very long, because I struggled to find any sense of, it wasn't rewarding for me. I didn't really get much personal satisfaction from it, but I also felt like what I was trying to achieve through engineering, which was helping the world in some way or helping people in some way, doing it through a corporate engineering job just seemed, what would be the word? Like a farce. Like even when I would apply for jobs at companies that were doing, let's say, environmental type engineering projects. I did solar design, for example. I worked on wastewater treatment facilities. I even did some community parks, which I love, parks and cities,
Yeah.
but it all just seemed fake. Like the stuff that I was doing wasn't bettering the world in a way that I wanted to with my work. It was just kind of perpetuating the status quo.
Did you have a vision for what that would look like? Or was it a sort of like, I'll know it when I see it and I don't see it?
Yeah. I mean, when I was in college, that was really, like it is for most people, I think, a very coming of age time for me. It's where I kind of discovered my values, what was important to me. And I mentioned this in an email to you. You had said that you were somewhat involved with the Occupy movement in California. And when I was in college, I got involved with various radical leftist politic groups. I did a lot of work for advocacy for the homeless, and did a lot of environmental activism as well. I also, at that time, I guess this is somewhat related. I became vegan, and so that kind of became part of my identity as well from an ethical perspective.
Sure.
I really wanted to just live a life that I thought was in line with what I thought was good and right. And any work that I did, I wanted to be furthering the causes that I believed in. As I started to understand the way the world works and know more about it, I realized that the type of work that you would do in, let's say, a corporate engineering role, even if it's going to, on the surface, seem like it's a good thing. Like, I did solar design for the top of, a large building for a town facility. So that seems good.
Yeah.
There's just like, there's so much stuff involved with that's not in line with my values, that by the time you get to the end product of like, yeah, sure, there's like solar panels on the roof of this building, I just feel like, at what cost did it take to even get to that point? How much, well, we can get into this, but like, it just wasn't rewarding. Like,
Yeah.
it just made me question if it's like, is any of this stuff really helping at all? When the fact that like, yeah, sure, we put like solar panels on this building, but like, my boss is driving around in like a truck he doesn't need. Like, like no one's living the lifestyle on a day-to-day basis that's like moving like your life and the world in the direction you want to be. You're just kind of doing these like token projects that are like supposedly helping the world and community.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. It's like, okay, the structure of everything that is here is not something I'm into. And then we're just like adding something that sounds good on paper on top of this thing, but we're not actually addressing like the structure beneath it.
Absolutely. I had an internship when I was in college at a company called Groom Energy Solutions. And for a young engineer, who was interested in energy efficiency and renewable energy, working for a company called Energy Solutions sounds awesome. Like, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And it's like, yeah, all their projects were like retrofitting lighting, making them more energy efficient, replacing different types of mechanical equipment in buildings to make them more energy efficient. But like, it's good and it's fine. And I think maybe if I was passionate about the actual work, it could have been fine. But I remember this conversation, or overhearing a conversation once with the CEO of my company, who was talking to somebody on the phone. And I don't even know what they were talking about, but I just remember him saying, like, on the phone, yeah, we're called Groom Energy Solutions, but like, I never said that like we're a sustainable company, like we're not trying to do this, that, and the other thing. It's like, we're just trying to do the thing we're doing. And I totally get it. Now as a business owner, I know what it's like to run a business, and there's certain things maybe you sometimes need to do, but I just became very disillusioned with the whole greater green engineering and renewable energy space. So I quit my formal engineering job in 2013 and left. Well, there was a lot of stress involved too. So I won't just say it was because of, not liking what I was doing, which was true. It was also incredible. I found it incredibly stressful to go to the office every day, to be in an environment I didn't enjoy, to be surrounded by people who I saw what my future would be if I stayed at that company. And, my manager was a guy who was there for like 30 years. And I was just like, I don't want to be this guy. Like, I don't want this to be my life, 30 years from now, doing the same thing, maybe just managing some younger kids. But I was under a lot of stress too with just the job. And so I quit and I left, and I went to go hike the Appalachian Trail. And that was kind of my first foray into living the life that I wanted to live.
I have questions about that. So I think you may have already answered my question, because that makes a little bit more sense. But the question is, what circumstances did you have at that point that made you think that quitting your job and like walking for 5 months, or however long the AT takes, that wasn't going to be a catastrophe? Like, how could you afford that? Like, what was your sort of safety net that allowed you to say, right, F this, I'm out of here?
Yeah. I was never worried about it. I've never felt reliant on needing to have a job for my own security. I've always felt like I could figure it out and I'd be okay. I think in a lot of ways I was lucky early on as a kid. I never really developed much of a materialistic mindset. I've never felt the need for much beyond just basic conditions of life to make me happy, a place to live and, some fun things to do and some friends, food. Don't feel like I need that much.
Yeah.
So when I actually, this kind of goes back to when I was in college. I was, I realized probably when I was about a sophomore in college, maybe about 18 or 19, that I didn't want to stay on this career trajectory. But at that point, I was already in pretty good college debt. I
Yeah.
probably had $30,000 in debt for my first year of college. And I was like, shit, like I'm going to have to pay this off.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was younger, like a sophomore in college, thinking, hey, do I change majors? Do I pursue something that's more in line with my interests and values? Or do I, just quit college? But, I was like, engineering pays well. It can pay well. Might as well just see this through, get a job, pay down my debt. And that was kind of my mission from, I guess, the age of like 19 to 23. It was, it was like, hey, I don't like engineering. I don't really want to be an engineer. But by the time I graduated, I don't remember exactly, 40 to 60,000 in debt probably. And it was just like, hey, let's pay this off as soon as possible to get my freedom back. And then I can figure out what I want to do with my life.
So you did that before you quit. You paid off your loans before you quit.
Yeah.
Nice.
So all through college, I lived so frugally. I dumpster dove for food. I, hung out with friends that just, lived kind of a super frugal lifestyle. I, hardly spent anything, worked some good internships through college to help pay as I went. And then when I graduated, it was just like, I'm going to put everything, like, I don't know what it was, like everything beyond rent
yeah,
towards my debt. And I paid down what it was. I forget, but like 40 to 60,000, something like that. I paid that down in about 3 years. And like, I literally just had a spreadsheet, and it was like, as soon as I got the paycheck every 2 weeks, it was just like, you put, I don't know, 80% of that or something to my loans. And I had like this date. It's like, when am I going to be free? When am I going to be free? And then I remember finally paying off my debt and going out for my lunch break and just going for a walk like I would normally do most days to get the hell out of the office. And just thinking like, wow, like I'm free now. Like I have a college degree. I have no debt. I'm 22, 23 at this time. I have no money. I have no net worth because I think I was saving like the 401k match, but I wasn't saving beyond that. It was just like all going to the debt.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'm back to zero.
Hey, zero's better than negative a lot.
But I felt free, and I didn't feel like anyone could control me anymore. And, there was times in college where I was like, I remember Googling like, how do you live in a van? Because I was like, I don't, I just want to live a fun life full of adventure and what I want to do and enjoy it. Like, I don't care. I don't need to make a lot of money to do that. I'd rather have the freedom over the shackles of having this full-time job that I don't love. So once I paid off my debt and was, in my mind, free, I worked for probably another, I think it was less than 6 months, just to stockpile some money.
Yeah.
I think I had about $30,000 if you count what was in my 401k. So I probably had like, I don't know, 20,000 in investments and then like maybe 10,000 in cash. And then I was like, all right, I hate this job. I'm so stressed out. I gotta go, guys. And that was really the beginning of creating the life that I wanted to live from that day forward. Yeah, I was so happy to leave that.
that I'm reflecting on kind of my own path, and first of all, it sounds like you were just smarter than me, but a difference in our paths is when I graduated, the company that I found to go work for, their subtitle was Deep Green Engineering. And the guy who founded the company, he had been an anti-nuke activist in like the 70s and 80s, and so it's like it felt very aligned with what I wanted to be doing. And so, I showed up, and almost everyone else there was young, Yeah, I came out of college. A lot of other hires were out of college or just a couple years out of college. They were young. They were like on the same wavelength values wise. We'd go hang out, and then we'd go down to the bar, we'd have some drinks, we'd talk about like our dreams for changing the world and all this other stuff. And it was not at all clear that that's not perhaps where I was supposed to be. Maybe it was where I was supposed to be, but it's just like I stuck it out there a lot longer, and it wasn't obvious to me that I should be doing something to gain my freedom, because I was like, no, this is what I want to be doing. This makes sense. So in some sense, I'm jealous of the fact that your first job was like so clearly uh, not in alignment with what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm glad I got out of it as early as I did, but it was a painful number of years. I mean, I was very stressed. I every day, like it was like office space, like going to this such a boring job. Like I didn't really relate with my coworkers. Didn't like what I was doing on a daily basis. I felt the financial stress of the student debt and like the need to pay that off.
Mm.
And just like, I think this is different than you, where you felt like you were living the life you wanted to live and being with the people you wanted to be with. I was not. And when I actually came back from the Appalachian Trail and had to get a job again, that's when I tried to find a company where the people were like me and we had the same values. I don't know if you'd want to get into that now or a bit later, but this is where I worked with people who were like me, and I thought I was doing the right thing.
Okay.
And it was okay.
Okay. So you're at E Corp. You go hike the AT. You just hike the AT.
Yeah, I hiked the Appalachian Trail.
Okay.
It was my first time hiking, really. Honestly, I went backpacking one time before that to do like a little practice, just I think I bought all my gear and I went for a one-night trip on a local trail in Massachusetts. But yeah, really went out with no experience, really. But tons of people hike the AT with no experience, and I knew that I had. It's a mental thing more than a physical thing. I was in fine shape. I was by no means an athlete, but I biked every day in Boston. Yeah. I was in good shape. So yeah, I went out, hiked the AT, had an amazing time. Like I said, this was kind of the beginning of creating the life I wanted to live. It was the first time in my adult life where I really felt like free and was doing what I wanted to be doing with my life. What's so cool about hiking a long trail is you get up every day and your life is so simple. You just have really one simple purpose, which is to move forward and advance along the trail. It's awesome. I loved it. It really resonated with me. Met a lot of great people. The types of interactions you have with those you meet are so different than the interactions we have in regular life. I would befriend people 3 times my age. I was 24 when I hiked it. I one of my best friends, her name was Blue Jay. I met her on the trail. Everyone has a trail name they go by. Yeah. She was like 70. And, we just hung out and hiked, and it was just like, everyone's the same on there. And it's like, I didn't know what her job was, what her history was. People don't even really talk about that. It's just everyone comes to the trail looking for similar things. And it's just like that break from the world, an opportunity to just like go into the unknown with this adventure. You don't know what's going to happen. And it's just fun. It's just a completely different way of life. The worries of home and, you're not thinking about where you're going to get food. You're not thinking about where you're going to make money. You're not thinking about relationships. It's just out there in nature, moving forward, meeting people along the way. It's really a vacation. It's awesome. I love it. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of in my entire life, having done it, because so few people can say they've done anything like that or they've even tried. And there were so many hard days. I mean, it's not easy. It rains a lot. It's cold a lot. And physically it's pretty hard. And so many people don't finish. Like, I don't know where they get this number, but they say like 80% of people quit within the first 2 weeks because they're like, no, this isn't for me. You know, they spend a couple nights in the tent. It rains the first time. Maybe they see a bear or something. They freak out. But I loved it. I would never want to quit. Like, I would have kept doing it forever if I could have. But
yeah,
eventually, I finished the hike. My funds were starting to run a little bit low, and I had to figure out what was next.
So you finished so you did the hike in 2013, the Appalachian Trail in
2014.
2014. Okay.
Yeah.
18, 14. And then you had to go back and get a job.
Yeah. You know, at the end of it, I was faced with a dilemma. And I think part of the whole hike was like, you know, take 6 months to figure out what am I going to do with my life, right? Like, spend 6 months on the trail looking for answers to questions of, you know, where do I want to live after this? What do I want to do? You know, I just left a career. I knew I didn't want to go back to it. What's the future going to look like? The unfortunate thing is, I didn't necessarily find those answers. You know, I got some clarity, sure, but when I came back, you know, I had this great experience behind me. I loved it, but yeah, it was kind of like, now I got to face reality again. So what's the reality going to be? What's the reality I create going to be though? Because I think one thing that I learned from hiking the AT was that I don't need to play by anyone else's rules if I don't want to. And I don't, and what I learned is that people are actually really good and nice. Everyone who hikes long trails often comes with this experience is they often say like, oh, it restored my faith in humanity. And that's true because you have so many pleasant experiences with others and that strangers help you out. And it's just the relationships you have are so much more positive than they tend to be in real life. But what it taught me, it was like, yeah, I don't need to play by other people's rules anymore unless I want to. You know, I don't need to do the kind of thing I don't want to do anymore. I was like, I should probably get a job to make money, but it's going to be more on my terms. Like, I'm not going to take shit anymore.
Yeah.
I don't need to at this point. It's like, sure, I only have a few $1,000s to my name, but it's like, I don't have debt. I'm a young guy. I'm healthy. I'm free. I have a better idea of what I want to do now. It's like, now I'm going to try to do things the way I want to do them. So it's funny. You said you got involved with a company where their tagline was deep green engineering. I came home and I found a company whose the CEO, the name of his dog, and he proudly advertised this on the company's website. The name of his dog was Katahdin. And for those who don't know, Mount Katahdin is the final mountain on the Appalachian Trail. So I see this and I'm like, okay, Katahdin, the guy who founded this company, it's a green home energy retrofit company. He had hiked the Appalachian Trail like 5 years prior. So I see this and I'm like, this is a sign. Like, here's this company run by an Appalachian Trail thru hiker. Like, all thru hikers understand each other. And he started this company doing home energy retrofits. Okay, I'll apply for this and I'll do this. I went in for the interview. I met with the guy. He was like, oh, you're a thru hiker. Yeah, you're a former engineer. Yeah, you're way overqualified for this job. You should come work for us. So I did. And that was kind of the beginning of what I would call the second act of my engineering career. The first act was certainly traditional engineering. I was a real engineer. Yeah. The second act, I was an overqualified person who did stuff that was kind of engineering like, but stuff that was more in line with my values, but definitely paid a lot less, which kind of sucked, but was way less stressful. But ultimately, I don't do any of that stuff anymore. Yeah. So To kind of move the story along, though, I worked for this company. They were called Next Step Living. They made homes more energy efficient through the installation of insulation, new windows, heating and cooling systems, solar systems. They kind of did everything. And it was cool. I liked it. They actually had a workforce that, at least on the surface, I really vibed well with. I think kind of like the company you said you worked with, everyone kind of was like me. They were all young, which was a stark difference from my old engineering job where everyone was like twice my age. Here, everyone was my age. We had a lot in common, shared interests. We're all trying to better the world, I guess, through our work. There was definitely some challenges with the company. And I think from the leadership side and the direction of where they were going, there was definitely some issues. The company ended up going bankrupt. But I worked there for 2 years before they went out of business. And I don't know, I just kind of coasted along. I didn't really know what I was doing. Certainly wasn't saving for financial independence or anything at that point, just kind of like coasting along. It was okay. And we were doing good things. Like I actually did feel kind of like we were living the mission I wanted to live there of helping people, making homes more energy efficient. We were actually doing that work and I felt good about it. The company certainly had issues. They ultimately went bankrupt. And when they went bankrupt, I got laid off. And then I went and hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. I learned, Tyler, that you actually live on the PCT, pretty close to it, and you want to do it in the future.
Yeah, I've got my permit.
You got your permit? When are you going?
I'm going on May 30th, my start date. So I'm not doing the whole thing. I'm actually starting here, and I'm probably not going all the way to Canada. I'm actually I'm running an event here in mid-September. Yep. So I've got to get back by then. So I'm going to be on trail for 2 months, possibly as many as 3 months.
Nice.
Kind of smell the roses pace.
Nice.
Because I'm not trying to beat, the snow in the Cascades. So
gotcha.
Yeah, from here. So, I mean, I've lived, like, I literally live in the southern Sierra Nevada mountains, and I've done some hiking up and around in here, but I am not that familiar actually with the high Sierras. I've never really been through most of it. I'm like, all right, this needs to change immediately. So, all doing the whole length of the Sierras is kind of priority number one. And then, having a good time and learning. My backpacking philosophy to date has been closer to extra heavy as opposed to ultra light. So I'm taking this opportunity to be like, right, that's not going to work. That's terrible. Let's get on Reddit. Let's go on the ultralight sub. Let's see what people are doing. Let's gain the wisdom from these people and have a better experience out there.
That's awesome. I'm so excited for you. The PCT was without a doubt the best, personal trip I ever went on. I think honestly, the best things I've ever done in my life, it's like meeting my wife, getting married, having our kid, and hiking the PCT. Like those are the best things ever. Things I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
Things that I'll never forget. Like, I would absolutely do it again in a heartbeat, and you're going to have so much fun.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm really excited. Now, you said you did it in 99 days.
Yeah.
That's quite quick.
I did it pretty quick. So there was a lot of differences between my Appalachian Trail hike and my PCT hike. When I hiked the Appalachian Trail, I actually hiked it with a partner. It was the woman who I was dating at the time. We're no longer together, but I did it as a couples hike. So we were together. Sure. And when you hike with another person, you need to, you do things differently than you would by yourself. We definitely took it a lot slower than I probably wanted to at times. And we did a lot more socializing, that kind of thing, hanging out, going to town, that kind of stuff along the way.
Yeah.
So when we hiked the AT, it took us a good 6 months. We probably only averaged 10 to 15 miles a day. But when I went to go hike the PCT. I was alone at that point. I wasn't with that woman anymore. I was by myself. And that was like the first big trip I'd gone on solo.
Mm.
So I just kind of wanted to do it my way. I mean, I was by myself, so obviously I had to do it my way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a goal to hike it in 100 days. That's just kind of the rhythm that I fell into.
Wow.
The PCT is so conducive to hiking quickly compared to the AT. It's such an easier trail from a terrain and technical perspective. You can just get up, you just get up in the morning, you hike, and you can cruise like 3 or 4 miles an hour if you're a strong hiker all day long. So I think my first day I did 25 miles, and I rarely did less than 25 miles a day. I did a lot of like 30-mile days, which might seem like a lot, but I mean, you know, if you hike 3 miles an hour for 10 hours, you know, you're hiking it in the summer, the days are pretty long. You know,
Yeah.
I would get up at dawn, hike for 5 hours or something, you know, have a lunch break, hang around for an hour or two, hike for another 5 hours.
It's not a lot else to do out there, right? There's no Netflix.
There's really not. And for this hike, I didn't spend much time in towns. I pretty much was in and out of towns. I think I tried to avoid them actually as much as possible. So I would schedule, when you hike these long trails, you need to plan everything around your food carries. Like, you know, where are you going to get your next supply of food? And often you have options, you know, it's like, do you hike 2 days, then take a bus into town and try to hitchhike? Or do you hike, you know, 5 days straight, skip over that one town, and then like there's an easier, maybe a store on the trail, that kind of thing. So like, there's no right way to do it, but you can plan how you want to approach it. And I definitely tried to minimize trips off trail. So if there was any kind of a store on the trail or within walking distance, I would plan to go to that, buy my food from that. I would definitely do some longer carries sometimes of food rather than take time getting off. And yeah, I mean, that was kind of my approach. And I definitely carried a lot less gear on my PCT hike than I did on the AT. And that just makes hiking so much more pleasant if you're trying to cover long distances. So I never felt burdened by the stuff that I had, which was nice.
You said your base weight was like 8 to 10 pounds?
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of fine-tuned it quite a bit over the years from when I started on the AT to doing the PCT, and then a little bit beyond that as well. When I first started with the AT, I had no background in hiking, you know, no experience. So, you know, I pretty much went to REI and bought the stuff that they had for sale at REI.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of great stuff at a store like that, but I hardly use any of that anymore. I mean, I think I've pretty much replaced all my gear since when I first started. For anyone looking into getting into backpacking, the best gear is made by like small independent manufacturers and like these small companies. The big name stuff that you'd buy at a store like REI generally is going to be really overbuilt, over-engineered. It's going to be a lot heavier than it needs to be. It's probably pretty good, durable stuff, but you just don't need it really. And you're going to end up buying all this stuff that you think you need that ultimately you don't. Like the number of items I carry in my pack now compared to when I first started hiking, it's probably less than half. There's so much stuff you don't need. So yeah, I mean, do you want to get into that? Do you want to talk about what you what you carry and how you can improve it?
I would absolutely love to. Yeah, I mean, like, because you know, I've been doing my homework, right? And it's interesting actually. On previous backpacking trips and things, I haven't been that into the logistics and the planning. Like, I'll do enough to be responsible, but it's like I never really enjoyed it. And I think part of that was probably just because I was burnt out with work and really busy with stuff, and now I'm less so. But I'm surprised at how much I'm enjoying the logistics, the planning, the research, and the homework of stuff. But what you were talking about reminded me of there's a lot of aphorisms in the ultralight community, right? And one of them is don't pack, or you will pack your fears, right? Don't pack your fears. Whether that means more insulation than you need, more shelter than you need, a bigger first aid kit than you need, like whatever. So yeah, what's your perspective on that, and like what you've packed, and like what, like maybe some of the surprising things you don't bring?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. This is funny. I'm so happy we're talking about this, actually, because I haven't thought about this stuff in depth or talked about it much in years. Yeah. I've continued to hike since 2016 when I did the PCT, but like I've really dialed in my gear, and it hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed in 7 years, and I don't think it probably will anymore in the future, because I just have the stuff now, and I know what I like. But don't pack your fears. Totally. The approach that people take is they bring everything they think they might need. I'm not going to say that that's a wrong approach for a beginner, because when you're a beginner, being over prepared is probably a good thing, because you probably do lack the knowledge and the skills to know what you truly need. But with anything that I would say maybe isn't safety related, I would say as a beginner, bring like warm layers and first aid kit and stuff. Like, stay safe. Don't bring luxuries don't just bring luxury items at first because you think you are going to need them. Like, only add them to your pack if you find yourself missing it. And luxuries can be a lot of different things. So
it's sort of a different definition for long hikers, right?
Yeah. So how do we best talk about this? So some of the things that I don't carry anymore, when I talk about all these things that I don't bring, this is not a sacrifice. I'm actually, I'm happy to not bring this stuff, and it makes my life easier and simpler. And I enjoy hiking more without these things. I don't bring a stove or any kind of cook kit anymore. That was a huge improvement. When I was a new hiker, I had a pocket rocket jet boil thing. I had little fuel canisters. Those fuel canisters, they would only last like a few days, and you would always need to be trying to find one. They were kind of hard to find because you had to go to like a specialty store to get one. They're just kind of a pain. You have your pot. You have maybe like a rag or something to clean the pot. You have the lid for the pot. You have your fork. I don't know. There's like 10 items or something that you need to carry just to bring a cook set. And the only things I would cook would be like heat up water for ramen, couscous, mashed potatoes, like soup. And what I realized and learned is you can actually make all those things that I just mentioned with what's called like the cold soaking method. Do you know about that, Tyler?
Yeah, I've been looking into it.
Have you ever tried it?
No, I made some old oats cold soak the other morning. That's pretty trivial. I haven't done like dinner stuff yet.
Yep. So oats is another thing. And these meals I mentioned, that's primarily what I was eating as a hiker. You replace all the things: the pot, the stove, the fuel canister, the stress of trying to find replacement fuel canisters, all this stuff, with I would just bring a empty plastic peanut butter jar, and all these things that I just mentioned: couscous, ramen noodles, oatmeal, dehydrated soup, dehydrated beans. All you need to do is put them in your peanut butter jar, put in water, shake it up, wait an hour or so while you hike, and then the stuff just rehydrates, and you can eat it at the ambient temperature. And I know as I describe this, like, you might be thinking like, well, that doesn't, like, I want a warm meal. That sounds horrible. I don't want to eat like cold mush or hot mush or whatever. But what I found is that, like, I didn't miss the warmth of the meal at all. Like, when you've been hiking for 10 or 20 or even 30 miles in a day, you're just hungry. And like, you want the starch, you want the carbs, you want the salt. You don't necessarily want the heat. especially on a trail like the PCT, it's a warm trail. Like you're in the desert. I mean, you're in the sun all day. Like you don't need a hot meal. And just to get rid of all those cook kit items, not only do you save like 2 to 3 pounds and a ton of pack space by replacing it with a 1 ounce jar, it just makes the process of cooking so much easier. You eliminate cooking a meal as a backpacker is a process. And when I go on casual weekend trips with friends, like I'll often bring a cook kit because hanging around a campfire and cooking, like that's part of the experience. Yeah. But as a backpacker, where your main goal is to travel the land and stuff, it was just, you free up all this time and all this complexity in your day by not having to stop and cook and, wash out your pod. And you don't have this like wet thing you're carrying around, and you don't need to do extra trips trying to find fuel. And it just simplifies your life. And it's one of the best things that I've done for sure.
Nice.
Some other things like first aid kit. Pretty much like I don't carry a first aid kit anymore. When I first started, I did, and you buy like this first aid kit from, I don't know, REI or something. It has Band-Aids and who knows what, like antiseptic and gauze and bee sting kit. I don't know what's in there. Over time, I just whittled it down. And now I don't carry anything. And I won't say nothing. Like there's a few things that I carry, but it's a much more, it's a first aid kit based on the skills and experience that I have. So you need to think about like, what's realistically going to happen to you when you're on the trail, and what can you realistically treat yourself. So the most common thing that's going to happen is you're going to like, trip and like scrape your knee or scrape your arm or something. If you get an abrasion like that or some kind of a cut, you don't really need a first aid kit. Like you just wash off with some water. I would always carry like a thing of hand sanitizer to wash my hands after I use the bathroom. Just wash off with some water, put some hand sanitizer on it. Yeah, fine. I would carry, I'm always carrying like some toilet paper. So, you can use that as like a bandage. Sure. Like you can dab it with some toilet paper, like whatever. It's just a cut. Like it's not a big deal. Yeah. What else is going to happen? If something more serious happens, like you break a bone or, like go unconscious or something, like, I don't know. In that case, you're kind of screwed. Like, like what's bringing a first, like, what are you going to do with a first aid kit if you break your bone? Like you got to get out.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a Band-Aid. Well, I've got a bone sticking out of my leg. The Band-Aid's not going to cut it.
so like you need to think about what can you actually treat, and then like what are the worst case scenarios and how do you handle the worst case scenarios? There's a lot that you can do with like, hand sanitizer, water, toilet paper. I'll often bring like a few ibuprofen pills, right? Like some kind of minor painkiller. Yeah. Just as like a who knows what happens kind of thing. Like if your knee really hurts and you need to hike 10 miles to get out of there, it's probably going to be better if you have some ibuprofen, and that takes up no space. But you can essentially carry those things, they take up no space. They don't weigh anything. But then I guess you do need to think about like, how are you going to handle worst case situations? And this is something that I think now that I'm a little bit older, I probably would approach differently if I were to hike a long trail. In the past, I would just be like, well, I'll be careful and hopefully nothing happens. And I think that that's what everyone should do. Because I mean, there's no way to like self-protect yourself from, falling off a cliff or getting attacked by a bear or getting bit by a rattlesnake, or like these are risks of hiking the trail. Yeah. And often you're hiking in places with no cell phone service, so your cell phone's not going to help you. You may be alone. So there's no one to help you. I think if I was to do a trip like that again, I would probably get one of those GPS alert things. Yeah. Especially now that I have a family, sure. Wife and kid. When I hiked the PCT, like it's basically like a walkie-talkie, and you don't do anything with it. But I think it might have had like a satellite text messaging feature, and then there was like an SOS button that would bring in like a helicopter. I didn't have anything like that when I hiked the PCT, but I think if I was to do something like that again, I would get one of those just for the off chance situation. Like every year you hear about it, like people do, whether it's in the Sierras or wherever, like get into bad situations. People do fall off cliffs, break their leg. Hope it never happens to you, but I think
Yeah.
that's one of the best things you can do is just have in the worst case scenario, at least you can press this button and someone will hopefully come and
Yeah.
help you.
Well, yeah, and I've done a fair amount of rock climbing,
Mm-hmm.
and I got into when I started climbing outdoors more. I got into reading. It's I guess the title of the publication is "Accidents in North American Climbing the Year," and it's just a book that is stories of accounts of accidents that have happened, both like near misses, like, oh, this thing happened but everyone's okay, and ones where people aren't okay. And kind of the whole point of the publication is like learn from the mistakes of others so you don't repeat their mistakes. And I think that can be really helpful to avoid getting in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look this up, but I feel like I remember seeing that most falls happen to hikers. It doesn't happen to climbers.
Wow.
Most climbers are, they've got ropes and stuff.
Yep.
But
Yep.
it's mostly hikers, either hiking on a section of the trail that's got exposure, or
Yep.
going to a cliff, right, for a photo opportunity or whatever, where you kind of get into trouble. And there's way more hikers than climbers, but
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it. There was a number of experiences that I've had personally hiking in mountainous regions with exposure, usually with snow, where
yeah.
you slip and you're on this steep slope and you slide and tumble and people fall really far. I've seen it happen. Thankfully the guy was okay, but I saw a 60-year-old guy when I was on the PCT take a tumble, fall probably like 500 feet, do like 10
Oh,
somersaults and then skid out. And thankfully he didn't hit any rocks or anything, but
oh
like
my God.
it was terrifying. And you just get into these situations when you're hiking trails like this. You never expect it, but you kind of like, it's kind of like the frog and hot water situation where like it seems okay, but it's like getting a little hotter and hotter and hotter. And then eventually you realize like, oh, well, I'm in deep.
We're in a situation
You're
here.
kind of
Yeah.
stuck. You get good at this stuff though, like with experience and like fine tuning what you bring with you and how you handle situations, and you get good with it. And but you need a lot less than you think that you need. With the Sierras, when you hike the Sierras or any snow area, mountainous area, I think two things that are really important to bring and not to skimp on are like micro spikes for your feet and like a good ice axe that you have a decent understanding of how to use. Because I don't know why I'm harping on the dangers, but there's very few dangers in hiking. But hiking in exposed snowy areas where you could slip and fall is like can be very extremely dangerous. So you never want to skimp on like safety gear like that to go ultralight, but you don't have to because the stuff you bring is so light because you're only wearing one shirt and one pair of shorts and you have no backup clothes and you have no stove and no first aid kit and and basically no other possessions. So you can afford to bring an ice axe and microspikes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's worth spending the time to avoid dangers because the stuff that's not dangerous kind of takes care of itself, right? Like that's the majority of the experience, of course. And so it's just like, all right, maybe I need to spend 80% of my time thinking about how to not slip and fall on ice and, whatever, take care of that. Okay. How to not freeze to death. And all right, I've got a good system for that.
Yep.
And then the rest of it's just like, just do your thing. Just walk north.
Totally. And it's like a super pleasant experience. Yeah.
And I like what you said. Like, you just don't need, you don't need as much as you think. And it's not a sacrifice. I really like your point about that, because I think that's true about more than just going on long walks in the woods. There's a lot that you don't need. So you do, we can talk about the PCT all day, and I probably have some more questions about hiking, but just for the sake of the narrative, I wanted to get through a couple more things. So you do the PCT in 2016. You do it in 99 days, which for people listening, I think the average is like 5 months. Like
I was probably doing about twice the speed of most people.
Yeah.
Made it actually hard to hike with anyone because very few people were going my pace.
Did you find that? Like, was that a bummer for you that like you didn't have a posse or a group of friends that you were kind of going with, or was that a benefit?
It was fine because I was very much looking for a solo experience. I actually did hook up with a few other hikers for very short periods of time, but and became good friends with them in that time we were together and really enjoyed it. But I was looking for a solo experience, so I wasn't going out of my way to slow down or speed up or whatever just to be with people.
Yeah,
I just kind of wanted to do my thing.
Sure. Well, you got to hike your own hike, as they say, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 2016, you get off you get off the PCT. What's your move? Because you had the engineering job you didn't like, AT. Then you had a home energy retrofit job that was a better fit, but it went bankrupt. So you did the PCT. It's 2016. What's next?
This is the beginning of the modern era. I think of my life in different stages. I'm sure everyone does based on these like big things that happen to you, right? And for me, it's like college was transformative. It kind of developed my ideals and beliefs. My first engineering job, AT, second job, PCT, and now the modern era. So when I got back from the PCT, I would have loved to have kept hiking forever. And I was getting kind of deeper into the hiking culture and learning about people who basically become like chronic hikers. Maybe they work a job for half the year and then hike the other half of the year.
Yeah.
Kind of support that lifestyle or whatever. One of my friends who I met on the PCTA, he actually kind of ended up doing that for like the next 5 years. But for me, I realized at that point, like I wanted to have like a more robust kind of long-term financial plan. Like what am I doing here with my life? Like, this is fun, but am I just going to keep doing this hamster wheel of like hiking and working forever?
Yeah.
I mean, which seems fun, but like, what do you do after that? So this is when I kind of got serious about working to become financially independent. And that has been kind of the predominant force of my energy for the past 7 years. I had kind of always known about, I'd always been pretty good at like personal finance, and I paid off my debt really quick. I read personal finance blogs and that kind of thing. I think I knew kind of about this idea of like saving for your future so you could retire early or live a different kind of life. But I wasn't hooked on it yet. And I kind of knew about these ideas all throughout like the hiking years and all that. But in 2016, I came back, I got another job, kind of in this home energy retrofit space, but actually as this is a government program that I worked in, and I was kind of like an inspector working on like the government side of it at this point.
Yeah.
Making sure all the contractors were doing a good job.
Yeah. So the homeowners gets the grant or money or however the program works. Yeah.
Yep. So I was kind of working on that side of it. So I got this decent job. It was pretty easy. It was kind of like on the road. I would just drive around to different job sites, check in on different projects, make sure that the contractors were installing things properly. I would say I liked it. It was fun. I was out of the office. It was kind of a blue collar job, but like an easy one. Like I just kind of looked at stuff and used my knowledge to say like, that looks good. Or that looks bad. And it paid okay, it's still less actually than I was making as a real engineer, but it paid pretty good. And I kind of learned about some of the big financial independence blogs at that time. I got big into like Mr. Money Mustache. I later learned about Early Retirement Extreme, Jacob Fisker, and just kind of went in the deep end of saving for my future. I kind of went back to, I was lucky in that I never had lifestyle creep.
Yeah.
Like all through these years, I never went beyond living like I did as a college student. I lived with roommates. I had cheap rent. I always seeked out cheap rent. I never had a fancy car. I never bought fancy things, you know.
Yeah.
I probably had a little bit of lifestyle creep. You know, I went to restaurants and stuff like that, but like nothing bad. So I was pretty much able to save over 50% of my income from my job. And I just, you know, just tried to increase that over time, saving as much as I could. I knew that I wasn't the work that I was doing. I knew I didn't want to do it forever.
Yeah.
And this was primarily driven by like, you know, I don't know what I want to do in the future, but I know it's not this. So yeah, I mean, I saved pretty hard for, I don't know, 5 years. And then I started a side hustle, which has now become like my full self-employed business. When I came back from the PCT, I wanted to maintain the sense of adventure that I got from the PCT and hiking. But I wasn't really sure how to do it, like within the constructs of a normal 40-hour-a-week full-time job. I ended up getting into running and becoming a runner, which was a new thing for me. That was a way for me to, I guess, channel my physical energy, my sense of adventure of like going out and running and exploring. I started entering races and, you know, being competitive through my running and pushing myself and trying to become as good of a runner as I could. Kind of became my, you know, my thing after the PCT. Like I would love to go on another long through hike right now, but, and I do go on weekend ones. But it's hard to do that when you're holding down like a full-time job and living where I live. I don't live in a place right now that has, I've hiked everything around here.
Yeah.
But running is like a little taste of that adventure every day. You know, I can go out for an hour run and I can run to a local trail, or go do a track workout and push myself really hard. And I can get that, you know, small bite-size chunk of, you know, physical activity, movement through space, pushing myself, working towards a greater goal. So running kind of became my thing. Yeah, I started a run coaching business a couple of years ago, and you know, I hired. So when I signed up for my first marathon, I wanted to train for it the right way, because if I was going to go through the effort of doing it, you know, I wanted to learn how to train like an athlete and do it properly, and not just like make it up and do terrible. So I hired a coach. She taught me how to train the right way. And I improved a ton. I really enjoyed the experience. And she ended up quitting coaching. She didn't do it for very long, but you know, the experience, I loved it. And I was like, you know, I think I could help other people the same way too. So I started coaching. I kind of emulated my style off of what she shared with me and how she taught me. And that was in 2019, while I still had this inspector role for energy efficiency projects. Yeah. And I started off coaching just like a few people, a couple friends, and then some of them started paying me to do it. And then I just, you know, kind of grew that on the weekends, nights, that kind of thing. I would do a lot of promotion online and in my local running community, try to get more people who wanted to be coached by me. And as my athletes started to have more and more success, I would share their results and show that online. Other people started to see, and it just kind of snowballed and grew and grew and grew. In 2020, COVID obviously happened. And then in 2021, I got to this point where I had a crossroads to take with my life. All through COVID, I had been working from home and working from home for my corporate job. And I loved that. I never liked going to an office. Even when I liked the job, and I rarely liked the job, but even when I liked the job, I never liked going to the office. Yeah. But like that was like I wanted to work remotely. That's what I want to do. Yeah. And my company was starting to make rumblings of like, okay, we're going to bring people back to the office. this was conveniently a time where my personal run coaching business was starting to take off, do pretty well. I had gotten up to, I don't know, 15 clients or something at that point. I wasn't making a ton of money. I think I was making just a little over 2,000 a month from my run coaching, but it was enough to cover my living expenses. Yeah, I kind of went through like a rough thing with work, realized I I knew I didn't want to work that much longer, but the opportunity presented itself to take my run coaching full time. My company wanted to bring us back to the office. I knew I didn't want to go. Like setting foot back was going to be a total personal failure for me to like have to go back there. And my business was starting to take off. So yeah, I made the choice to quit my engineering, like my corporate job as an inspector, and take my run coaching business full time. And that was I think it was in March or April 2021. So it's coming up on 2 years now.
Nice.
Yeah, I've just been doing that full time since, running my own business online, coaching adults to become better road runners, run marathons, half marathons, and shorter events. And yeah, that's what I do for work now. And it's great. It's like the first time in my life that I like what I do, and I feel like it's like fully in line with my values and the life I want to live. So that kind of catches us up to now.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love hearing about that. Like, people finding stuff that like, I do what I want to be doing. This isn't a sacrifice what I'm doing. It's interesting that you got into running later. When I saw that you had done the PCT in 99 days, I was like, oh, well, this makes sense. This guy's a marathoner. Like, clearly he just applied his like marathon being in shape, whatever, to the PCT. But like, no, it's the other way around. It's like you got into running as a way of kind of getting into and being part of that experience.
Totally. I didn't play any sports when I was in school. I got into biking when I was in college. I lived in Boston, which is a very bike friendly city. So I would bike around and stuff, but I wasn't a runner. I wasn't anything, but it was a cool way to like you said, to just take a little bit of that sense of adventure that I got from doing these long trips into like daily life and stay in touch with that. Yeah.
My electrical system is going on the fritz. I don't know exactly why it's doing that. Normally it just like shuts off. It's like, no, we're down here. But it was flickering, which is strange. But everything's still good here.
Is it all solar powered there?
Yeah, it's all solar panel. The closest grid energy system here is like 20 miles away.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's all solar. And I've actually, my solar system is on Serenity, and then I've got it wired out and coming into here. So I can't check my inverter at the moment. Yeah, so you're caught up. You got into running. You've built this business, and you're doing it full time. When did you meet your wife? At what point in the story did that happen?
So after I got back from the PCTA, I started to get in. Sorry, I keep saying PCTA. That's another thing, and that is a different thing in my life, which is very relevant these days. I'm not going to get into it, but
okay.
I got back from the PCT and started to get into running, and I met my wife at a local running club, actually. So running was a great way for me to get involved with the community as an adult too. Kind of through this whole story of mine, for better or worse, probably mostly worse, I didn't stay in great touch with a lot of like my college friends and friends in like the early years after college. And running was like a great way to kind of get like reintroduced into a community and make friends as a, then 27, 26-year-old. So I met my wife there. I met a lot of other runners who, spent a lot of good times with, running or getting drinks after the run, that kind of thing. And she was a runner. She kind of helped motivate me to want to get like deeper into it, because she had done all these cool things as a runner that I hadn't done yet. Yeah. I moved in with her pretty quickly after meeting her, because I came home from the PCT and I like didn't really have a house. I was just crashing with friends, renting with friends, and that kind of thing. And I'm really thankful that I met her, because I probably had about a year of being solo and wandering after I came back from the PCT, but then I met her, and yeah, it's kind of helped shape my modern life and the trajectory I'm on. I'm definitely a family guy now. We had our first kid
Yeah.
8 months ago.
Congratulations.
So
That's great.
yeah, thank you. So yeah, now we're trying to live. Well, on the surface, it probably looks like we're living a pretty traditional family life in kind of a suburban area. But we do a lot of things on our own terms. I'm really happy with. I think we've got a good thing going right now. We're really able to just focus on spending time as a family with each other, with our kid. Neither of us have work obligations that take us away from what we want to do. We've really been able to structure the work that we do each week, like around the life we want to live. And it's definitely not perfect, and it's definitely still stressful in some ways, but I'm so happy, some of the choices that I made, even when I was like, 19 and started to like pay off my college debt then versus like, buying a new car or something like that, or whatever, like all these choices helped lead to where we are now. And it's fun. It's a cool place.
Is your wife as on board with frugality or more on board with frugality than you are? Or like, because one of the most common issues that people have who get into the FIRE community, or when they get into radical frugality, whether they're interested in financial independence or not, is, if your life partner is on board with that. So how is that with you guys?
Yeah, she's definitely on board with it. She's definitely less extreme as I am and would be if I was, fully by myself. But she's on board. Like she's definitely frugal, and we're working towards the same goals. It's just maybe the pace and the level of asceticism perhaps is a bit different. I think if it was just me, well, I mean, I could tell you when I met her, I lived in an apartment that was like, no furniture, nothing on the walls, like just some hiking gear and like some food. And, and now we have a pretty normal house with, we bought a new couch and we have a kitchen full of way too many plates and stuff like that. But, we're aligned on the most important things.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
So you've got this side hustle that became your main thing. You were able to let go of the corporate job. You make in excess of your cost of living.
Yep.
And you're spending your time doing mostly what you want to do and you're in alignment with. Do you have like a target date of like, oh, I'll be financially independent at this point? Or how important is that sort of way of looking at your life?
Yeah, this has been a big question for me actually over the past 2 years. Something I've been kind of struggling with, like what's the driving force now with work and with financial accumulation? Starting in 2016, when I got serious about saving for the concept of financial independence and early retirement, the primary driver was wanting to escape work that I didn't like. That was the main driver. I mean, it was as simple as I hate my job. I don't want to do this. How do I get out?
I want out.
Let's save a ton of money. Now it's definitely a lot more complicated. So we are not financially independent by, let's say, like the 4% rule or the 25 times your annual expenses. We're over, it depends how you calculate it. We're over halfway there. We have enough financial cushion and security where I'm not stressed about money. We need to continue to make an income to, live the life that we want to live. But I also feel like, from my experience living as a hiker and all these things, like, if we wanted to cut our expenses in half tomorrow and, never work again, we could do that. If we wanted to move to some off-grid cabin in Maine, and then like we could do that tomorrow and not work again.
Yeah.
But I guess right now we are, yeah, I'm still saving, investing for the future. There's not really the urgency that there used to be.
Hmm.
I've been able to design my life and work where I don't work more than I really want to. There's definitely aspects of my business that I don't love and I don't want to do forever, but there are other parts that I do enjoy and give me personal fulfillment. But I don't know, it's good. I mean, in all honesty, I probably work like 20 hours a week, and it's very flexible for the most part on my own schedule. And I'm, you know, lucky to right now be making more than I've ever made ever at a job. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm probably we're still probably saving over 50% of our income and not working a ton. But when we are working, doing the work that we love, yeah, I don't know. It's like, I don't really know what, in some ways I'm like, what's next? Like, what's the point of all this now?
Yeah.
Like I'm not motivated to make more. Like increasing my income is not a motivation. I don't want to work harder to make more money or like work more to make more money. So like I've been trying to dial down, like remove the parts of my job that I don't love and just keep the parts that I do love. Some of that's possible now, some of it's not really. So to answer your question, like I, I guess, yeah, I still want to work towards this like traditional definition of fire like 25 times your annual expenses, but we don't have a hard date on it. And there's not like the urgency anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping, let's just say in 5 years, I hope I'm not doing the exact same thing I'm doing now. But I
Sure.
don't know what the path to that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure you're familiar with this, but in the communities we're involved in, we talk about two different types of motivation. One is
Mm-hmm.
freedom from, and one is freedom to, right? So the
Yeah.
traditional motivation for going fire is freedom from a job that sucks, right? But now you've got your life arranged such that you've got a freedom too. You are free to do these things that you largely like to do, right? Which is this business, and it's interesting and fun. And your freedom from motivation is decreased because so little relatively about your life sucks, which is great. And it's also like I could see you being like, okay, all right, what are we what are we doing now? And maybe I'm wondering what you think about when
Mm-hmm.
someone's invested a lot in pursuing a goal, when some of that motivation either changes, sublimates into something else, or goes away. It can be, I don't know if it's like difficult to maintain, but it's like the situation changes, doesn't it,
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
terms of motivation?
Yeah, it does.
It forces you to think like, wait, what's life about?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think that that's been my biggest question for the last couple of years. I think that so one thing that's been really empowering, and I think this, if I can share a lesson, I think that this has been really helpful. Is learning how to make my own money has been
Mm,
huge. Like
mm,
so much of the conversation around financial independence is, you know, like you said, this freedom from like saving at this work you do for another person to escape and not have to do it anymore. Learning how to make my own money, how to be an entrepreneur, and how to I make a little bit more now than I ever made as an employee before. Learning how to do that was hard, but now that I've learned that, I'm extremely confident that I'm always going to be able to make money.
mm,
I don't know what that's going to look like or what I'm going to want to do, because like
mm.
what I want to do is different, but I know how to do it now. Like I know how to sell things. I know how to build some kind of a product or service. Often in these conversations around financial independence or just like thinking about your future, planning for the future, like
Yeah.
people are just so worried about scarcity and like running out of money or whatever. But like if you can develop the skill to always be able to make money or know how
Mm.
to make money, I mean, I don't worry about that at all anymore.
It really kind of de-emphasizes that milestone, right? Of, oh, I have my safe withdrawal rate is 4%, or my stash is 25x, whatever your number is, right? It's like, well, my number is whatever it is, but if I need to open the spigot on some money, I know how to do that. And I've got buffers so I can see that moment coming. It's not like I'm going to be like, oh my God, it's Tuesday. On Thursday, I need money and I don't have any. Right. It's going to
Totally.
sneak up on you.
Totally. So I think like learning that, feeling empowered personally, and I think for anyone to learn how to make money on their own and not have to do it for somebody else is huge, because then it totally changes your relationship with work and employment. Like it's not you working for someone else anymore. It's, you doing your own thing, and it's just different. There's also the question of like, I also do like the retire early part of FIRE.
Yeah.
And I think many of the conversations now around this subject, people are like, oh, it's not about retiring early. It's just about like gaining this freedom to do what you want to do. And that's true. But I talk about this with my friend Matt. It's like, my friend Matt will say like, okay, it's like, sure, you like your job, but like, there's nothing else in the world you would rather be doing than that
really?
thing. And you're like, yeah, you're right. Like, yeah, I like my job and I like coaching, and in some ways, I always see coaching, probably playing some role in my life. But yeah, I don't want to do it forever. Like, it'll become boring, and in some ways, it already has become boring. And it's like, I want to go hike other trails and go and just hang out and do whatever all day. I don't know. For me, like working, it's not like intrinsically good or motivating or whatever. The less I can work, the better. I do want to have some kind of meaningful thing that I do each day and feel like I'm making a difference in the world. But you mentioned that like the freedom too, like now that we've created our life in this way, it's like, what do we want to do? We're definitely still trying to figure that out. Like, what's the right balance of work and fun and, helping others and community involvement, all that sort of stuff. It's a harder question to answer than I expected.
Are there any resources or books or people that you're following that you're finding helpful and useful in that process?
Yeah, I mean, so there's certain people in the financial independence, retire early space who kind of talk about this, like life after, the concepts of like life after FI, and though maybe technically we're not FI, I kind of think of ourselves as it. I really do. I am a lurker on the ERE forums. I get a lot of value out of those. I don't post on them, but I read them quite a bit. There's a podcast called Mile High Fi that I enjoy quite a bit. That's by Doug Cunnington, who's a online marketer guy, and the 1500 Days blog guy, Carl Jensen. And they could just kind of talk about like what their life is like now that they've both been financially independent for a while, and like earning money is not necessarily a motivation. So like, how do you stay motivated? What do you do after that?
Yeah.
I like it. I like listening to people having conversations about these things, because I think listening to podcasts for me is really helpful, just to like hear people talk through like what they're doing and what's interesting to them. Gives me a lot of ideas. But one thing that we've done that I think has been really helpful is my wife and I both started coaching at a local high school. We started coaching track and field and cross country there. And that might be like the best thing we have going right now. It's pretty big commitment. Basically, it's every day. We go in the afternoon and coach for a couple hours from like 3 to 5 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
Coach the team. We've been challenged to learn all these events in track and field that we didn't really know before. So like it's technically been challenging. There's meets and races and stuff we got to go to a lot. But it's really fun. It doesn't feel like a job. It doesn't feel like work. It just feels like something we want to do, and a way that we can help, kind of be leaders in our community or in a community, and get like the social interaction of spending time with our team and developing them and helping them become better athletes and people, and just kind of being involved with the Rhode Island track community as a whole has been really fun. And that's been a cool thing, because like we do get that it is a job in the sense like they do pay us a small stipend and stuff, but it's not like the money you make isn't worth the time invested. Like it's it's basically like volunteering, but they like compensate you a little bit to volunteer.
Yeah.
But we love it. And finding that and starting to do that has been like a really good like next thing for us, or like purpose for what we do. So yeah, that's kind of how things are going right now.
I like that you brought up the word purpose. I've been working with the concept of autonomy, mastery, and purpose, which I want to say that mostly comes from SDT, self-determination theory, which is like theory of how people feel fulfilled and things like that. And three of the attribute, I believe the way they frame it is attributes that are prerequisites for feeling fulfilled, having an intrinsic sense of motivation. Or you got to have autonomy, you got to have the sense that like what you're doing is self-directed, or you it's really in line with your values.
Yeah.
Mastery is this like there's got to be an opportunity to feel like you're good at what you're doing, you're competent. It's not either like way too easy or way too hard and you just totally suck at it. And then this sense of purpose, which also I've heard that instead of purposely use the word relatedness, which is like you feel related to other people. And so it's really like, is there much of a difference between purpose and relatedness? Because purpose is we typically feel that in sense to our relation to other people, right?
Yeah. Sports coaching for us has really been that. And in particular, coaching our high school team, our girls, like it's ticked all those boxes. My own personal business is great, but it's virtual coaching, like it's online based. So some of my athletes are local and I know them in person. I see them occasionally, but like I don't meet up with them on a regular basis. And that's not the point of my business. Like I purposely built an online based remote coaching business, but the coaching experience is very different than being there in person with the athlete, every day and actually physically seeing them advance and work on the things that they're doing and, all that stuff. And yeah, it's been super rewarding. I think it's been a great like post financial independence thing to do. Because we couldn't do it unless we were financially independent. The only people who are sports coaches for high school, pretty much are business owners or teachers, because they're the only people who have the schedule that allows for it.
Yeah.
But as business owners now, we can do whatever schedule we want to do. And though our business is our it's our main source of income. We don't really look at high school coaching as a major source of income, though it's nice that it's a small one. We're just able to do it. Like we've created a life that allows us to spend 6 days. It's a ton of time, 6 days a week for these girls. And I get to go spend 5 hours with them tonight because they have a big meet tonight. And just most people can't and wouldn't want to do it. But for us, it is rewarding and it hits, it's the social interaction. It's the challenge, sense of purpose. Like we're a team working towards this unified goal. It's cool. And it's the first thing that I've done in a long time, probably since college, that like wasn't motivated by the desire to make money. And that's kind of cool to be there. Like, cause I remember back in my college days, I was involved with political activism. I would go to group meetings, I would be in protests, all these sorts of things and social interaction that, was for a mission or for a goal, but the point of it wasn't to personally make money. I definitely wasn't making money by being an activist in college. And all through my 20s, pretty much everything I did was, with the exception of like the trips and stuff, the hikes, it was, how do I make money to provide for myself? But now being a high school coach, it's like, this is what I want to do. This is like actually what I want to do right now. So it's been really cool to figure that out. And I don't know what, we're not going to do it forever. We'll probably take a break, but I'm only 34. A lot of coaches are much older. So it's always something we could come back to. Like it could be a great job when we're in our 50s or 60s or 70s. It's a great job now, but it'll always be there. Like the opportunity will always be there. And we're enjoying it now while we have it. Yes, that's how things are right now.
That's really cool. That's really gratifying to hear. And I'm really curious to see where you go from here. So like definitely stay in touch. I want to be able to hear, you know, what the next phases are, you know, whenever that happens.
Thank you.
It's really cool to see people who have done the work to get themselves free early. And then it's like, yeah, you're 34, you're young, you've got energy. I also find it so cool to hear of parents, particularly of young children who are doing this place. Is like, you're going to be able to be there in a way, like in a way that many people can't, just because you've got so much freedom over your schedule. You know, you can be like, oh, hey, right now, whatever, maybe you've got something going on, maybe you're doing a coaching business, and you're like, look, for these years, we're just going to shut this down.
Yep.
And I'm just going to be there 100% or whatever, you know, whatever balance, right? I think that's
totally. That was a huge motivator. You know, I really like a lot of the stuff that Mr. Money Mustache has put out over the years. I like his whole mentality. And, you know, I think one of his early posts was like, he wanted to work really hard when he was young and save and invest so that when he had a family, he could be there 100% for the family. And I really took that to heart and wanted to do that too. So like, yeah, that's where we're at now. Like, I feel so lucky, you know, but neither me nor my wife need to, you know, have a full-time job or have a job we don't want to have. And we can just be there with our kid, which is cool. It's really cool. It's also challenging in its own ways to be with your kid all the time, but I wouldn't want it any other way. And I'm happy we did it that way. And yeah, the future, I have no idea. I have no freaking clue what we're going to do. Like, it's cool. It's so totally open-ended, totally open-ended, but I have no idea where we're going to go or what we're going to do.
I wanted to tell you, you said that activism, you don't make any money with the activism stuff. Au contraire, sir. You're just doing it wrong. So
how did you make money?
So I was, I mentioned in our email that I was hanging out with the Occupy Oakland folks, where the office was. Like kitty corner across the block was the Occupy Oakland encampment. Like we could look out the window and see, you know, the plaza full of tents. And so long story short, I kind of got involved with them. And in near the end of Occupy Oakland, it was end of January 2012. There was a big action during the day, and I showed up and we ran around, and I think we were trying to take over a building or something like that. And it kind of petered out. And so I was like, all right, seems like things are kind of done here. I went home. Then I was following along on Twitter, and it was like, stuff's going on. Like the cops are tear gassing people. It's like, oh, I got to get back down there. So I get on my bike, I ride back down, and I chain my bike up. It's funny, like there's the mass of occupiers running, and they're being chased by like 100 cops or something like that. I mean, they're being followed, you know?
Yeah.
And it's funny, I'm trying to catch up to my friends. And so I run through the crowd of police to get up with the group of people. We wound up getting kettled. So that, you know, they block off a street. There's 450 of us.
Wow. Yep.
They arrest all of us. It's like they had to commandeer city buses to put people on because they ran out of jail buses or whatever. Anyway, so, you know, that was Saturday night. I was released Monday morning around 3 a.m. You know, we were just in like the drunk tank, and it took them a long time to process people up. Not a big deal. Just hanging out in a concrete room with a bunch of friends, right? Several months later, I get an email from the ACLU, and it was like, yeah, that was an illegal. The arrest had been conducted illegally.
Wow.
On a technicality, right?
Yeah.
And so the ACLU sued, brought a class action lawsuit, and everyone who got arrested there, who didn't wind up getting a felony for, you know, something else, got a check for $3,000.
Oh my God.
So in a sort of poetic justice, my last payment on my student loans, I made with that check from the Alameda County Sheriff's Department.
That is awesome.
So
That is
just
so
throwing it
cool.
out there, just some ideas for how you can make money off of activism. Totally accidentally, but
Oh, I love that.
yeah, that today that was the highest hourly wage I've ever made.
Wow. Good job.
Uh,
I was too chicken to get arrested. I would hang out until the cops showed up, and then I would ride my bike away from there rather than towards it.
yeah, no, that's a good idea. I mean, I was standing like a couple people over from a guy who got shot in the forehead with allegedly a tear gas canister, but turns out it was probably a beanbag round, which implies that it wasn't a bad bounce. It was someone pointed a shotgun at this guy's head and
Yeah.
put a beanbag in it and shot him, and he had like he had to relearn how to talk and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
That was a crazy time. Crazy
and
time.
yeah, and you were in no, you were finishing up school then, right?
Yeah. I remember the day of my high school graduation. No, not high school, sorry. The day of my college graduation,
Yeah.
I left it and like I got my diploma and had my cap and gown or whatever. And then I immediately went to Occupy Boston from my graduation to Occupy Boston. And like, yeah, those were the final days of my activism life. Conversation for another time, I think. But
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I actually haven't since those days. I haven't actually had a conversation with someone who was also involved in it, and I've always it's always been challenging to try to have conversations with people about it, who weren't involved, didn't kind of get it. People be like, "Oh, what did you accomplish?" or like, "What were you trying
yeah,
to do there?" And it's like, I don't really have a good answer for you.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
I think for me, as my, as I've kind of, I'm going to say grown up, but I don't mean grown up to say that everything I did there was immature. But
Yeah.
now I just try to lead life a lot more by example. I think, or I try to embody like the values I want for the world, and try to, I guess, lead by example and just, get involved with positive things that I want for the world. Maybe that's my form of activism now. I haven't really actually told this full story like this before, like on a podcast or anything, but I like talking about it. And like we were chatting about earlier, like, yeah, now that I'm in this place where I feel like we're now in this place where it's like, yeah, the freedom to do stuff we want to do. It's been a real, like, not a bad problem to have. It's a good problem to have, but it's like, okay, what's next? Like, like the trajectory of life as it's laid out for you is pretty defined. It's like,
Yeah.
The whole like high school, college, career, work, have family, have kids. And it's like, we kind of jumped off of that after the college career, jumped off that. Now we're on this other path. Now we have kids.
Yeah.
But like, it's not just work for 30 years now and then retire. It's like the rest of our life. The rest of our life is kind of our retirement from corporate work now.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what's that going to look like? I don't know.
Having a kid. Go ahead.
Oh, having a kid has been great though, because now we can see the world through her eyes, and it's opened up the ability to do so many things that as, adults, you can't really do, or it would be awkward to do. Like now, now I can spend a day going to the playground with my kid, or taking her to like a petting zoo or something, like just going to community festivals and all that sort of stuff that just as 30-year-old couple maybe isn't really a great thing to do, or you wouldn't do, but
it's like she's your access. It's like, oh, they're fine. They're with her.
yeah. And now, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's I think Jacob's talked about this a fair amount on the forum, which is that there's sort of off the shelf life scripts that people can just take down, like you said, they worked for 30 years after college and blah, blah, blah. But when you get a script, you have to write your own script. And it's like, oh, this is a whole thing. I should think about this, or this is worth a lot of attention to write this the way I want to write it. And it's not at all, I think, the case that one ought to write like, oh, okay, this is what the next 30 years of my life is going to look like. It can be a year at a time, a day at a time.
Yeah. What I found too is like, as I gain more experience and competency with things too, like in some ways that makes my decisions of what I want to do more challenging. Or like for example, if you have all this free time, there's endless things you could fill the free time with. Like, one thing is I could learn how to play guitar, but like I could almost envision like, how would that go? Like, I could spend all this time learning how to play guitar, enjoy it a little bit, and then in like 6 months to a year, it's just kind of like a dead end.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, then what am I going to do? It's like, okay, I can learn how to garden. Like, we used to have a garden. We don't have one anymore. I guess everything you do is kind of, at least I found this, it kind of has like a lifespan or a shelf life. Like, every hobby I've had, I've really enjoyed for, let's say, 3 to 5 years. And then I got tired of it. And then I need to like, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
And again, it's like a good problem to have when your life is like open-ended and you're trying to think like, okay, what's the next thing you're going to get into?
Yeah.
Like, where is this going to go? Is this going to go where I want it to go? Or is it just going to be like something I do for a little while and then put down? I don't know. Interesting things to think about.
Yeah. And I think that when you're, it's like there's the traditional life path, and then there's the traditional fire path, which is like work a traditional career until you hit your number and then you're done. And then there's what you're doing, which is, different still from that, because you're not FI, but you're working on this your own business and stuff. But what you envision when you're white knuckling something and you've got your mostly freedom from, right? You're like, oh, it is going to be so great not doing this thing that I don't like.
Yep.
And then, but then your vision of what it is that you are doing can be very, it's all in your head. It's all theoretical, right? You can be like, oh, I'm going to do guitar. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. It's going to be amazing. I'll sit on a beach, or, whatever that vision is. But then when you start to do that, it's like, okay, it's not Instagram.
Yeah.
It's it's like I'm awake for 16 hours a day. I fill it with stuff. And the reality of it is like it always is, it's different than what you imagine it to be. And then so as you start getting experience living a self-directed life, then that becomes I think a lot more complex and rich, I think, which is both good, but also, like you're saying, it's like it's a whole thing. Yeah.
It's a nice opportunity though to be presented with these to have these choices.
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, I guess things would just be boring if there was a obvious path of what to do next.
Right.
So it's a good problem to have like this totally open-ended future.
Chris, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm really glad that you reached out so that we could have this. Is there, first of all, if people want to check out your stuff, check out your coaching business, if they're interested in that, how should people try to track you down on the internet, if at all?
Yeah. So, everything I have online is through my coaching business. So if you're interested in running, I have a lot of great resources. Some of them are free. Like, I wrote a book on how to train for a marathon, and you can download a free copy of that from my website. My website is nightandruns.com. And then I also have training plans and coaching services if you're interested in becoming a better runner. I do a podcast too, the Night and Runs podcast. So each week I talk about different aspects of running on there. And that's pretty much it. Aside from my running persona, I don't really do anything online. But if you are interested in becoming a better runner, check it out at nightandruns.com.
Okay, so to wrap up, I just wanted to pull out a couple threads that I really like that I got out of my conversation with Chris. So a couple points. He never had much lifestyle creep. I think that's important, and that relates to an idea that I'll talk about in a second, that he didn't make very many mistakes. He didn't make big mistakes, such as, he mentioned he never like bought a big car. He never like got into a lot of debt. So I think a lot of success comes not success comes from both making good choices, but it also comes very much from not making bad choices. Like, you can be in a very good place if you simply avoid making bad choices. And like, I don't see any of those in Chris's life, or at least in the story that he shared with us, right? Like, he, from a sort of personal freedom perspective, he made very few, if any, bad choices. It seemed like he didn't make any large ones. All right. But so a key dynamic here is that he had the courage, for whatever reason, to say, this sucks, I'm going to do something different and do a pattern interrupt. He did that with his through hikes, and then because of those experiences, he had a real taste that, oh, life could be different, right? So we had this idea, I'm not really into this, let me try something else, something really different. And he did that, and then that experience that he had informed his decision making about what he would then do with the rest of his life, like his next step, right? So my idea of Chris's story is that his adventures and his explorations of the world, which took courage and a bit of risk, helped him to define and refine his why, his vision, what he wanted. And then the methodology of FIRE and ERE helped him to achieve that. He's now currently doing something he finds really meaningful and enjoyable. He's building a family. He's not stressed from his job. He's not overly stressed from his job. And, another theme that arises from his story is that Chris's answers didn't come all at once. It wasn't an instantaneous thing, that they evolved over time, and they're still continuing to evolve. We left off with him talking about, not knowing what comes next, but knowing that it's not going to be, in 5 years, it's going to be different than where he is right now, for sure. But to get to the point that he's at now, which is quite a good place, it was years and years of searching and experimenting and trying different things. He knew in his second year of college he didn't really want to be an engineer. And his first engineering job doubly confirmed that. But it got him, got him to pay his loans off. So okay, check, and then he goes and hikes the AT. And that so he tries another company that's not so evil corpy, and he's got more freedom now, right? Because he has no debt. Has basically no money, but he doesn't have any debt. So he's not really under the gun. And so he tries another company that maybe is a better fit. And he's like, all right, well, this still isn't great. And so when that company goes under, he's like, all right, I need another adventure on the PCT. And I think it's important to note that his PCT hike, unlike his AT, was a solo hike. Lots and lots of, 99 days to be precise, days of just thinking his own thoughts and reflection and introspection, right? And so my sense is that as he finishes the PCT, he's getting an even clearer sense of what he wants, or at least the shape of what he wants. And so he gets a job that's, maybe even slightly better than the last one, but it's just fine. It's nothing magical, but it's also not super stressful. But it's at this point that he gets really into the praxis of financial independence. So frugality, saving, investing, all these other things. And it's here that he picks up running. And this is the thread that I think connects it. It's like these jobs are things that he's like, I'm not really into this. Let me go have some adventures. His adventures inform his choice of jobs, but it also informs his choice of what to do with his life. So he gets into running as a form of kind of continuing on that sense of adventure and personal challenge that he experienced on his through hikes. And he really enjoys it. He gets really competent at it, right? That's a key thing. He gets very skilled at running. And so he's able to leverage that into a side hustle. And eventually, when his circumstances change, he's able to elevate that side hustle into his full gig. So now he's a business owner. He's his own boss. He calls the shots. He's making more money than he ever has. And a lot of that came out of the freedoms afforded to him from this frugality practice, from lifestyle design, from thinking through what it was he really wants in these adventures. So I think his story is really interesting because of how it sort of paints a realistic picture, right? Like there's nothing earth-shattering, like Chris is not running SpaceX or something like that. It's like not a crazy story, but it's just, how to put it? It's like, here's a guy who didn't screw up. Here's a guy who didn't make mistakes, and he had this sort of doggedness to follow his values and his North Star. He had the sense of North Star. He said he's always had it, and he really developed it during his college years. And he's, for the last decade, coming up on decade and a half now, he's been following this sense that he's got within himself of like, I want something that's not this, so I'm going to keep moving, and I'm going to keep searching, and I'm going to keep working. And he was, it takes a lot. I mean, like the ability to complete a through hike, just though that bit of information right there. This guy's finished the AT and he finished the PCT. That speaks highly to his character, his perseverance, his dedication. It's a very small percentage of people who actually finish, of those who start, of the people who even get to the point of starting. He finished it. Not that many people finish, and then to do it in 99 days is kind of nuts. But then of course he gets into running, and he also displays like the ability to work really hard and learn. And develop his skills and his competence, and he's able to leverage that into like, oh, this is what I do now, this is more aligned. So something that I liked about Chris is that while he didn't like his job, his response to his job was not, I'm just gonna like crawl into a little hole within this company and cruise by and skate and then hit my FI number and quit. I know that's a popular story, and everyone's got to do their own thing, and I don't like that story. I like that he kept searching and hustling and finding something else that wasted less of his life. I like that quite a lot, and I think that's an important theme here. For me, something I think that now that I'm talking about it, that's resonating with me is that Chris didn't take "this sucks" as the final answer, or even as like, well, this sucks, but I'm just going to white knuckle through it. He was like, no. Like, okay, this is what I can do right now, but I'm going to keep working, and I'm going to keep looking for something else. I'm going to be making decisions, and I'm going to be working on my life, and I really respect that quite a lot. Another thing to point out, he mentions himself how it looks from the surface like they're living a pretty traditional, urban, suburban family life, but under the surface, there's a level of values alignment, freedom, security, and resilience that is far from traditional. It's far from normal, unfortunately, but kudos to Chris and his wife for pulling that off for their family. And that's something you see a lot. That's something that Jacob's talked about, is the fact that you don't have to look like a weirdo. And I've said this before, like my life looks really weird, and that's because I really like having a weird life, but it doesn't have to. Like all this post-consumer praxis that I talk to, you don't have to have a weird looking life. And that's one of the reasons why I want to have people like Chris on, because looking weird isn't a value for Chris, but having a life that is built the way he wants it. His life is on his terms, and you can have a life that is on your own terms, and it can look from a quick glance, right? From far away, it can look, oh, that looks like a normal family, like a normal life. But there's a lot more going on beneath the surface than there is in most typical houses. Okay, I think final point. So Chris is at this point in his life right now, 2023. Chris has essentially won the game of finding work that you find enjoyable, and he's got a massive amount of financial security. I mean, halfway to household, financially independent. He's not stressed about money, so he's kind of won that game, and he's got his mind turned to larger questions of what life is about. What does he want to do with the rest of his life? And it took getting to this point, it required getting out of those situations that he didn't like so much to get to the point where he was free to think about that, right? Like, it's very difficult to have productive thinking about what life is for and what your life specifically is for when you're not free, when you don't have a bucket of freedom, when you don't have that cash to say, like, you know what, I just need some time and space to think and introspect and experiment. If you don't have that freedom, it's very difficult to have a productive conversation with yourself or with your partner about that sort of thing. But he's put in the work, and he and his wife has put in the work and the dedication to get to that point, and now they're able to wrestle with it. And I don't think the answers are easy to that for anyone. For some people it might be easy, but for most people, the question of what life is about takes a lot of effort. Like, it is a difficult question to wrestle with. And so part of the beauty of post-consumer praxis and attaining your own freedom is delivering your life to a position where you are able to productively wrestle with that question for yourself and not be stressed and not be overworked and not be shackled by needing to work something that's kind of soul sucking, right?